Welcome to the Revision Wizards podcast. I'm Miss Catherine M.H., and I am joined by the all-powerful editing mage, V.E. Griffith. This is episode 15, and today we're doing a scene analysis with Ian Worrall. This episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons who help us to build our podcast so we can help you make your editing and revision process better.
This week, we want to give a huge shout out to Mary Van Everbrook, who has very generously upped her Patreon pledge. She's super active in our community, and we love having her along for the ride. If you'd like to support the show for as little as $1 an episode, we have a bunch of neat benefits you can take advantage of, including a special podcast feed with extra content and personal updates, early access to scene analysis slots, the opportunity to ask questions for Ask the Editor episodes, professional editing, and more. You can find out everything you need to know at patreon.com/revisionwizards. And with that, here we go with Ian. Okay, so this morning we're on for a scene analysis with Ian. Ian, if you could tell us your name and your pronouns.
Ian Worrall, he, him.
Thanks very much. Okay. Tell us about this scene that we're about to analyze. What's going on, and what are you intending for this scene? What's it about? What's the book about?
Well, the book is sort of undercover cop. He gets burned on an operation by somebody, and so his support team gets killed. So he has to bring a junkie prostitute into hiding to stop her from getting killed from the bikers. That that part happens right before the start of the book. And so in this scene, bikers have taken his ex-wife, his son, and his ex-mother-in-law as hostage, as well as the girl that he tried to rescue hostage. So he has to choose between saving her or saving his ex-wife and son and ex-mother-in-law.
Okay. That sounds like quite the scene if you do it right.
Yeah.
So, okay. Miss Catherine, do you want to get started on the characters?
Sure. So I focused on mine on, his name is Lawson, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm so bad with names. I focused on Lawson because we didn't get too much of the other characters. So for me, his voice when he was talking, which were a few little points, he was very angry, which is understandable in the situation he's in.
Yeah.
His emotional state, you could tell he was torn with this choice that he has to make. There's the ups, there's the downs. He's crying, he's like hitting stuff, he's breaking phones. So you can see his emotional state in that way. And that's the same with, I thought, the physical. It was very, very mirrored to it. You could see the moments where his training would kick in and he would try to calm himself, but there was still that rising emotional toll that was taking over.
I thought he sounded very educated, very aware of himself, of his capabilities, of his limitations. It was clear to me that he realized that in the situation the bad guys have put him into, he can save one or the other, but not both. And that's the deliberate position they want him in. So I think it was well executed. Turbo sounds executed, but he's clearly a subordinate. His diction is good. He speaks like correct English, but he may not actually be very smart. Which is now, remember, I only have this little bitty bit from him, but he was like, well, what's going to happen? Well, when will we know? Those are the kinds of things that someone in his position might be able to come up with intuitively, and he didn't. So I don't know if that's what you were intending, but that's the way it came across to me. He doesn't really have a good sense of the capabilities of his opponent, the likely outcome of this fight, and of course, the reader always knows what's the outcome of the fight because generally the good guy wins. Yeah. But he's physically he's healthy, but he's concerned for his future welfare because most people don't want to get shot. Damien, his boss, sounds to me commanding and in control. He doesn't underestimate his opponent. He's very clear about his opponent's capabilities, and I think that comes through in just the couple of sentences that we have from him in that telephone conversation. And he doesn't seem particularly concerned about other people, and he's ready to make a go of it. He's ready for this fight. He wants this, bring it on. So that's where we are with characters. We have a real short character list this time.
Okay.
So did we get it right?
Yeah, sort of. Well, the reason Damien would know Lawson's capabilities because it would be revealed that Damien was Lawson's former partner and turned him in as a dirty cop or something, and so he went to prison. So Lawson thought that his partner got killed in prison or something, and so actually Turbo would be the president of the chapter of the biker club. So and so Damien, he's just deferring to Damien because because Damien would have known.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense, and that comes across very well. Ms. Catherine, how about protagonist wants and needs, or protagonist wants? Let's say.
Okay, so his wants, he wants to save people. I think that's very well portrayed. He definitely wants to keep people safe. He already knows that message that dinged in the cup holder. He's like, I know what it is. It still was like a shock to him, but his want to help people and save people is there. It's not acquired just yet, so we'll see, but it's very clear that that's what he wants to be able to do.
Yeah, he wants to rescue both his family and Veronica. I rated this section to be excellent. It comes through. Sorry about that. It comes through loud and clear as he thinks through his tactics. He thinks through his options. It's real simple and straightforward.
Yeah.
So.
And I think it does well to mimic the internal needs, which is internal need to me is to protect. So he wants to be able to protect people, and he's having that struggle with it right now because yes, he can save someone, which is what he wants to do, but that internal I must protect people is at odds because he can only pick certain people. And it does make me wonder, because I've only read this one chapter, so it makes me wonder what would have happened originally to have made the people he would normally protect the most so distant that he could choose somebody else.
Yeah, I guess basically the way we shown earlier when he was talking with Veronica, when he would be he spent so much time undercover because he as an undercover cop because he thought that would help keep his family safe from like all the bad people of the world or something. That's and he sort of like the so busy with his job he inadvertently neglected his family. And
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it seemed to me that his internal need is to reunite with his son or perhaps all of his family. Whether or not he acquired it is undetermined at this point. This scene is obviously just too short, and it's an introduction to a battle scene. I felt like that internal need was clear. He directly thinks about it. It's something that he considers, that he goes through in his head. At this point, he may actually be aware of his emotional wound, because considering how to heal it or how to move forward with it on the part of the character is appropriate for consideration this late in the story. I thought it was really well done. It was another excellent from me. So, but I think there's a little difference between me and Catherine. I think his primary need is to heal his family, not just protect people. Is that where you were going, Ian?
Yeah. That's pretty much what it would be. Yeah.
Okay.
Strike out for me.
That's okay. It's another one of those times where sometimes, the reader has to interpret too. So, So what, for the force of antagonism's external pursuits, I felt like his want in this scene was simply to force a confrontation. And it's clear he's going to get it. He wants a confrontation with Lawson. He taunts Lawson with the photography. If he were only intent on causing harm, he'd just kill or torture the hostages and be done with it. Instead, he's going the nah route. You know, I've got him and you want him. So I thought that this was excellent as well. Catherine?
Yeah, so I definitely thought that his external pursuit is to make him pick the impossible. Which person or group do you want to protect? And will you get here in enough time to even save them? Or have you made choices, even though I'm going to shoot the person right after I get done sending you the pictures? So I think he was definitely wants our protagonist to make an impossible decision. And yeah, he pretty much gets that.
I felt like the flip side of that, I rated the internal need, the internal desire of the antagonist to be fair, but I will say that the reason for that was because I was only looking at this 900-word scene. I feel like, based on what I see here, the antagonist's internal wound will probably have been well explained or will be well explained in the future, and I just haven't seen it from this little 1,000-word clip. So, but that's I'm open to the possibility that the remainder of the manuscript is fantastic. So I don't think, based on what I see, that there's any ambiguity on your part about what's driving this character. And I think that that's going to wind up coming through in the remainder of the manuscript.
Yeah, I rated it underdeveloped just for this chapter. And that's because all we have is this chapter. And I couldn't really see, like, I read what your internal desire for him had been, but from that small little bit, I didn't see it. But also, you're at chapter 51. We probably have seen it at this point, so I'm not concerned about it either.
What do you think, Ian? Are we on the money?
Yeah, it seemed to be on money on that. Yeah.
Okay. Is this is where we've been so far basically what you were shooting for in the scene?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All right. Ms. Catherine, what's the conflict here?
So the conflict for me, so I didn't read through your explanation first. I went and did it and then read all of your guys' explanations. So they might be a little different. But the conflict for me was the moment where he has to decide which person he's going to save. He's given two options. So that is his conflict. And I think it's an excellent conflict because you see him fall back on his normal training where he's trying to stay calm and squash out the emotion of the, oh shit, everything's happening. And oh my God, they have them. And he's got to be like, okay, the conflict is they're asking me to choose. And so that's what I thought was the moment of conflict, of where he's like, who am I closer to?
Yeah, the conflict for me is the kidnapping and the need to rescue both Veronica and the family. That leads to the choice, directly to the choice, which one do I go for? And I rated it as good only because again, the scene, because it's not a surprise that he's going to go try and save them, because that's the nature of the book and the genre. It may be that the hostage taking was a surprise in a previous scene, And so that might upgrade the rating here up to excellent, but his need to make this choice wasn't a surprise, given that, he gets these text messages with these pictures, so but I think overall this is going to wind up being, a good show. So do we have it right, or are we off?
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay.
Yeah, you got it right. That was pretty much like I remember reading, like, in the 3-story method, is certainly he wanted the bad choice, choice between 2 bad choices, which one. And so that was what that was trying to convey there. He has to make the choice between 2 bad choices.
Yeah, I thought the choice
definitely do
section. Yeah, I thought the choice section was very clearly a best bad choice. The presentation is excellent. The stakes are high. They're clear. We know what happens if he chooses one. We know what happens if he chooses the other. The reader is told which choice the protagonist makes, but the protagonist understands there's significant downsides. The genre is and the book is probably, I know intellectually that we're going to rescue everybody at the end. Maybe the ex-wife or maybe the mother-in-law gets killed, which may or may not be a good thing. But it's clear, it isn't clear that from this scene that's possible. And so the reader is propelled forward into the story to find out the resolution and the consequence. So, Catherine, how did you rate the choice?
So I rated the choice as good. And that's because I think there are times where it's almost like you're hand holding us through the choice. And then you're literally saying he's made his choice. So for me, that's a little, I would like to see it more through body language or some internal dialogue. However, that changes the pacing. And I personally like more details, but the pacing of this is done really well. It is fast, it's quick. He's got to make the choice quickly. So if you were to add those things, it would definitely slow it down. So I think overall it was done well. He's made the choice, and his choice is, I'm going for Veronica.
Yeah. And I thought I in terms of leading from choice to consequence, I thought the consequence was fair, in that it's obvious that Lawson will move to implement his choice. On the other hand, in a scene that's this short, that's really all that we have time for. I understand that this is sort of a connector scene probably between an action scene, a little bit of a down to figure out what to do, and then we're going back into another action scene. So it seems to me like we are at, and this is just my guess, it seems like we are at one of the story-wide choices, not just a scene level choice. And so and I'm guessing that because the stakes are so high, this is different than, a beginning of the book. Should I go to bed or should I go out to drink? I think that since it's a story-wide choice, it's appropriate we don't have a resolution in this short scene. So, but obviously he's going to make his choice, he's going to implement it, and that's as far as we get. So
interesting. I looked at this a little differently, because why wouldn't I, right? I rated this as excellent because my consequence for it was that he has decided on revenge at this point. He is going to make these bikers pay. And it starts that build up. You're expecting something. So as the reader, you know that like shit's about to get real. The antagonist knows that something's coming too. So like you're building for that. You're also building to see if she's already dead or not. And then you know that the main character is now starting to build his plan. So I thought that was really great foreshadowing to what is hopefully like this great climactic scene of like this whole battle going down, and you're like, yes, or like, oh no, as you watch through it. So I think it's really good as the like building moment. So like this has been going slow. Now he's made his choice, and it's got to build pretty quick, because that's kind of how I feel it's going. So I thought the consequence was excellent.
So where do you fall, Ian? What do you think?
Probably somewhere in between both, because like I would is like obviously that's the for that part where it's a connector scene, like you said, it has to be done quick. The choice has to be done quick, and everything has to build up to where the final battle and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What about showing versus telling, Miss Catherine?
I rated this as good. There was a bit of telling, but it plays well with the pacing, because like I said, if you go into a lot of detail on showing, it's going to slow that pacing down. And it wasn't like it ever pulled me out of the story to have those bits of telling. So I thought it was pretty good. Personally, I just like detail, but I know that it doesn't match the pacing. What about you?
I rated this as fair because there is a fair amount of telling, but I didn't. It wasn't so bad that it needed a complete rewrite or anything like that. It sort of works as it is. There are a couple of places in the manuscript that I flagged. We could do this better instead of a tell. We could do this as the character thinking, or the character screaming at the steering wheel, or something like that. That would make it both as fast paced, but also a show, so that we have to interpret what the character is thinking or what the character is saying, as opposed to simply the narrator telling us.
Yeah.
So how do you feel like you did with that, Ian?
Well, a lot of it's like where sometimes I could probably add a little bit of showing in there, but sometimes it's like Catherine says, sometimes putting too much detail slows down the pace.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I agree. It is a balancing act, and is this intended as a genre thriller?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot more telling in those.
Yeah, there is a lot more telling it because it winds up being quicker. But it's something, I'm also a person that likes detail, and I like a lot of showing. I like it when the author gives me credit for the intelligence to figure out what's going on with the protagonist, instead of just whumping me over the head with what's going on with the protagonist. So that was let's see, there was one that I marked. Here it is. It's right after your scene break, where he's got his hands, he steeples his hands. He starts to cry. He's slamming the phone. That whole thing sort of struck me as a tell. And it's two very short paragraphs. It's about 5 sentences or so. So it's not a lot, but I did suggest a way that we could get, it's like he slams on the gas and off we go. You could do that through internal dialogue, and in terms of character voice, you could make the words short and choppy and the sentences not complete, because I'm going to kill him. I'm going to get him. And that gives us both his voice into what's going on in his head, and also the brevity that speeds up pacing.
I think that's the spot I marked too, where I was like, a little more detail through this zone would be great. Or just, I guess, showing just a little bit more instead of the telling would be great for that section.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what's your reaction, Ian?
I guess I'd agree with both of you. It's something they could do a little bit better on that. Reading the analysis again, we would agree with both of you on that one.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I thought generally speaking, the whole thing is pretty good. I think it's just those 2 paragraphs that you could work on a little bit. Right. In terms of the next section on passive voice, everybody knows who listens to this podcast that I absolutely hate passive voice. It drives me insane. And I rated this section to be excellent because I found almost no passive voice in the whole thing. I thought it was really good. And there's not much to be improved in terms of passive voice.
Thanks.
Yeah,
What do you think,
I
Catherine?
rated it as good. Just because I'm still learning passive voice, as VE knows, because he works on my stuff for me. So I thought it was good anytime I did notice it, and that's only because now I'm trying to make sure I notice it. It didn't stop the flow of the story for me. So well done.
Yeah. Okay. And Ms. Catherine, what about sentence structure and punctuation and all those sorts of things, the mechanical?
So again, still learning half of that myself, but I thought it was excellent. It didn't really take me, like, I didn't notice anything really blaring. There was one spot I made a note that I was like, you're missing the word all right here. And then there was one sentence that I did highlight for you that when reading it, it just sounded very awkward as I was reading it. And I was like, there's something in this sentence that seems off. Maybe it just needs like a switch around or something, but I did highlight that one for you. Other than that, I thought it was really clean and I enjoyed reading it.
It's the
Okay.
part where I think the part where you said you highlighted didn't work. You're sort of awkward. I think that was when he was talking about all the work she did to get out. It was all the work she did to get off of heroin because she was a former junkie. That's
Okay.
That's what that meant there.
Okay.
Gotcha.
I gave it a ranking of underdeveloped. And part of this comes from my training as a line editor and because I'm a pedant. And I look at this stuff sentence by sentence. I found a number of sentence fragments, which are incomplete sentences. I found several errors in tense, which is where the narrator switches from past tense to present tense. So we looked at we're coming, that kind of thing. And so I corrected those and I flagged those. And I found a couple of instances where commas could be helpful or additional punctuation could clarify ambiguous sentences. Microsoft Word, I turned on track changes, which I'm sure you saw. Microsoft Word counted about 100 changes that I made, which in something this short, honestly, for most writers is not unusual.
Good job.
Yeah, I'm hard at this. I'm a hard grader at this.
Yes,
so, the fact that I found a lot doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad writer.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Yeah.
He can be deadly with it. Okay. I've handed him something and he's like, yeah, there's like 700 changes. And I was like, oh, it's one chapter. And he's like, yeah, get to work on that. So
yeah. So, I mean, I have been accused on many occasions of writing like a lawyer. The flip side of that is that for me, those kinds of line editing errors pull me out of the story. And so it's important to me as an editor that we remove them because we don't want your writers pulled out of the story. Some of the changes that I make, maybe you want to change around a little bit again as character voice, but take a look and see.
All right, cool. Yeah.
So, what did you think of the changes that I made, or have you had a chance to look?
Some of them seem reasonable. Some of them I might. So they look good. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought I originally started at as a present tense, and then when I in the earlier address, and I tried to switch it all to past tense here. So I thought I got it all. But
okay, yeah, that explains the errors in tense. Then, yeah, that's usually when they creep in. Is when the author rewrites rewrites the tense. That's usually when those errors happen. So, overall, I thought, compared to some stuff I've seen, this is actually very good. So, despite my rating and the number of changes, I've seen way worse come across my desk. So, I think it's really good. This is a story that I would like to read and that I would be interested to edit if you ever get to the chance where, get to the point where that's something that you wanted to do. So
yeah, it was definitely very good. The only thing that confused me was I thought he was on a motorcycle until halfway through. And then I was like, oh, he's in a
Okay.
car. But then I was like, I would have known that from the past chapters. So
Uh,
yeah. So, but I really like it. It sounds good. The pacing's very, very good, I think. So like, yeah, good job.
okay, thanks.
yeah. Did you have any questions before we wrap up?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay.
Okay.
Everything
All
was
right.
answered.
All right. Well, tell us where our listeners can find you on the internet.
Well, I have my website, ianworrallauthor.com.
Mm-hmm.
Send you links to all that and stuff. Plus, I
Sure,
got my
we'll put them in
Facebook page, iWorrallAuthor, and I'm on Twitter at Scotia Writer and stuff like that. And send you all the links and everything.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll put
Yeah.
those in the show notes for folks so folks can find you. There we go.
Cool.
So, all right. Well, thanks very much.
Have a good day.
Yeah, thanks for being so brave to come join us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks.